Hello, welcome to the NSA. We're recording you all tonight. Have nothing to worry about. So, thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate you showing up, and it's wonderful to have you all here and see some new faces and some old faces. Not old in the term of old, you know what I mean. So, it's just great to have you all feel a sympathy with and a love for this kind of work and what you're about to hear tonight. Some of you may not have heard any of this before, and and if it's too shocking, just exit quietly out the door. Okay. So we want to take a look. I've been doing that over these years in these salons, looking at the Western tradition, its influence, its therapeutic possibilities, its practice. And I wanted to address tonight, I don't know how I'm going to, it's a puzzle. It's a real puzzle. I'm talking to you about a life that is free, about a free life for yourself. So you have the possibility of living a free life. And the question is, why, of the 7 billion people on Earth, is there such an infinitesimal number of people that are willing to take this direction, the one that I had the grace of encountering in my own life course, without looking for it? And the question is, why not be free? And what's stopping us? So I hope to address some of that tonight, because I want to leave you with a major point about how to conduct the spiritual life in the everyday existence. So we're talking about an invisible reality, an intangible reality, and we're talking about a visible reality, a material reality. And the work that we are intending to teach that you can bring with you into the everyday life is to achieve a balance. You understand and you know very clearly the world around you is not in balance. You have personal experiences going on now with people who are around you who are not in balance. And they are suffering in many different ways, either physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, or morally. They are all reflecting each other, and it's all happening around you, and maybe to you suffering as well in some manner, shape, or form along these lines, which we don't really have to. The idea that Buddha said, which talked to all the traditions, was that suffering can be eliminated, that you can overcome it. What Buddha said, and Mary Magdalene echoed 2,000 years ago, who was the consort and probably the wife of Jesus, said the similar thing. He said, the source of all this suffering, that's the lot of all your existence, is attachment. So being attached to whatever it is, your inner thoughts, illusions, fantasies, ideas, held beliefs that you refuse to give up, attachment to things, goods, attachment to relationships that you can't give up, goods that you feel you must acquire, and so on, being connected to the physical world in an excessive degree is an attachment. There's also an excessive attachment to the spiritual world. So you can go too far either way, and that was highlighted in the Egyptian hieroglyph of the figures in the hieroglyphs who stand in profile. And you notice when you go to the museum and look at the hieroglyphic figures, they're standing in profile. One eye is looking at you. Where's the other eye? The other eye is looking to the invisible reality. So they are saying, look, honor both. You have to honor your material life and honor your immaterial or invisible or intangible life. That both are valid and both have to come into coordination with each other. When they wanted to represent death, they showed a figure always with two eyes facing forward. So when you looked at the hieroglyph of the figure with two eyes looking at you or lying down looking at you, represented death, having the meaning that there was an inordinate or excessive attachment to material life, and to finding and believing that material life is going to save you, or going to in this acquisition is going to save you, and it's going to be a hedge against what the future is bringing, which is this overarching fear of death. And then we get caught up in that, and then we get frightened, and then we seek to find ways of barriers to prevent that happening for us. All the while forgetting the invisible or intangible reality as a function, a feature that's extremely important for our lived experience on the earth, and our resorting to this invisible reality as a protective force for us. You learn to love, you learn faith, you learn trust, you learn hope, you learn to use will in the correct way for yourself, not in a destructive way, not to exercise your will in the service of control, but to exercise your will in the service of freedom, to exercise your will in the service of love, to use and to regulate your internal experience so that you can catch the revelations coming from the invisible reality. Remember, you're the hieroglyph. You have one eye looking at the invisible reality. The invisible reality is sending us messages all over the place, constantly sending us messages. What you can learn is how to receive them, how you become the receptive organ for it. That's taught. Everything I'm talking to you about is taught. It's not some kind of thing that you're born with it, and by the grace of God, you happen to have this gift. We have people in the room who have great gifts, and I know that for a fact. They have very high gifts in this way. They have gifts of sensitivity, of that kind of hypersensitivity, can read things, and so on. Doesn't mean that you're a spiritual being. You can have a great gift, an occult gift for clairvoyance, clairaudience. Doesn't mean you're a spiritually based person. There are many people who talk now about being, that they're spiritual. They have an interest, an inclination, but they don't take the step. Yes, you have a question, Ben.
Yes. What would that step be, or what would it look like if you saw a person who had taken that step?
Did you take the first question? One question you would ask: have you taken the 3 vows? I say that to you, Vince. Right? What's your answer? Wow.
My answer is I don't know what vows you're referring to.
Exactly. And as soon as the person says, I don't know what vows you're referring to, you know he's not there. Right? That's a direct question to indicate as a triage, to weed out the ones who are promoting themselves through their own egoism, or some narcissism, or what we tend to call vanity, that they have some spiritually based idea about their life and they're living a spiritual life. Did you take the 3 vows? Poverty, chastity, and obedience. And then that would be defined, what they all mean and how you do that, because they all can be practiced. And they're practiced according to the 5 light currents of will, as opposed to the 5 dark currents of will, which is to take. Now you see that in the materialistic world we live in. We're not dissing the materialistic world. We're dissing your relationship to the materialistic world, your need for things, believing that in this exile that we're living in, because we live in exile in this world. All human beings are living in exile according to this tradition, because this tradition started with an exile from Eden, and the couple were exiled. Adam and Eve were exiled. They made an error, and they were not able to go further in their relationship of questing and becoming bonded and in a unitive relationship with God, the absolute one mind. They were tested. They didn't pass the test. They were in exile. We're in exile. We're living in exile in this world. And in the exile, we're taught that the only way that you can provide safety for yourself and security is to depend on the world around you, like Homeland Security, or beefing up the police force in New York City, right? Or launching a worldwide police effort to counteract the terrorists and so on. And that's going to provide safety and security for you, right? The experience shows that it doesn't work. We know that it doesn't work. The groups are about all over the place, and now they're feeding the propaganda into the American consciousness that they've infiltrated in the United States to make us feel more hopeless, more helpless, more weak, and more dependent on external authorities to save us and to provide security and safety for us, and that we have to turn to them. because in the exile, we're conditioned to turn to the material world for our safety. So we don't follow the vow of obedience. Obedience means to give ear. The root of the word obey is ear, to give ear. So you don't listen to the voice of the invisible reality. You're not opening yourself up. You're attached to so many things here that you're not making space for those messages to come to you. It needs a space for it to come, to listen, right? And so then there's the vow of chastity. Chastity has to do with being faithful to one. And in that faithfulness, it has to do with the opposite, which is debauchery, addiction, immoderation of any sort, whatever it is. And it could be in all of these realms I'm mentioning, material realm, gustatory realm, food, whatever it is, acquisition, any sensory pleasure, the world of Egypt. This is Egypt. And we are being lured and tempted by all of this stuff. And we're not faithful. We're not moderate. We're not pure in our stream of life. We let lots of things intrude, lots of things come in as contaminants in our lives. You find it in the medical profession. You go and people get chemotherapy and they take herbs. That's a mixing. That's it. That's not being chaste. You're not being faithful to one way. You're scared because you're scared for your life. And the way it works in the world of exile, is that the forces of darkness that are in great noise here and control make you afraid for your life and make you dependent on them, so that you're afraid to take a step, not knowing where it's going, to take a step of freedom because you're concerned with what the result will be, what the outcome will be. And that's not a spiritual life. And then, so the dark currents of will to take, to keep, hold on to at the expense of others, advance at the expense of others. You see that around you. We did that all over the world. We're going at the expense of others. We're treading into their places and so on, right? And the desire to be great, to arrogate to yourself the knowledge and power of the absolute one mind. Okay, so the vow of poverty is to detach from the attachments, mentally, emotionally, not to give in to these distressing emotional states and to these stories and ideas you have about things that don't exist. And so you have a lot of stories that you're making up about what will happen to me if I do that, because you're always afraid for your life. So you're depending on the things you get or what you're able to know about the future that you can control, run, master, take charge of. And if you could do that, you'd be safe. It's absolute illusion. And everybody's running around doing this. Most of the time, you're about things that don't exist. Most everybody's involved with what isn't. And the greed factor is the opposite of the poverty, impoverishing yourself, which means step away from the attachments, make a space so you can be in line with the eternal divine consciousness that's always sending you messages all the time. It loves you. It loves you. And then we turn away and we don't love it. And you want to love God. We'll use that shorthand term. You want to love divinity, and you want to love your neighbor as yourself. It says, love God with all your heart, soul, and might. Love your neighbor as yourself. You want to love yourself, love your neighbor, and love divinity and love. And don't worry about a thing. As a great psychic friend of mine says to me when I call him on the phone, he says, don't worry about a thing, don't worry about a thing, don't worry about a thing. So he's trying to get a point across. But there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to be futurizing about. There's nothing to be focusing on something that doesn't exist. That's what stops us from the second phase of the Isis-Osiris story, where she remembers him. All we do by going into the future and being concerned about what doesn't exist all the time, and if you really pay attention to yourself, you're going to find out most of the time that you're concerned with what isn't, which includes the distressing emotions that are attached to the what isn't, because all the distressing emotions are about what doesn't exist. They're attached to what doesn't exist. It could be the depression, shame, and regret about the past. or it could be anxiety, fear, worry, or any bevy of, of emotional states that are distressing, which are having devastating effects on your physiological system. You are dying to yourself by doing this because you're not loving. You can't be in these states of being and love. They can't occupy the same space. You either love or you don't love. And when you don't love, you've turned away from the lie that's looking at the invisible, intangible reality because you don't believe it exists, because you refuse and are unwilling to experiment to see if it's so. You've been told by the institutions like natural science, materialistic science, that you only should be involved with the physical, and not to put attention, because that you're not to pay attention to all that stuff, right? All of the education has been not to pay attention to all that stuff. That's all charlatanism, quackery, and so on, because it's all arrayed to foster the dark currents of will, to take, to keep, hold on to at the expense of others, advance at the expense of others, and the desire to be great. So they give you the illusion that you can become this great master of the world and master of the universe, right? That's a mouthful to ask a person, to talk to a person who says, I'm a spiritually being, or people constantly say, oh, I got a friend. He's really very spiritual. And then you find out that he's rife with anxiety, that he's got a destructive relationship with his wife, and all of this kind of thing is going on, and he's carrying all this out, but he wants to fob himself off as having he has a spiritual interest. That question alone, what are the three vows? Have you taken the three vows? Because that's a step toward the second part of the story, which is remembering. You have to remember yourself. And why not? Why not love and remember yourself? That's been the key issue for all the millennia. It's the key issue. We're talking now about over 7 billion people on Earth. And the number of people that do what I'm talking about is minuscule. And people are blithely wanting and allowing themselves to go around in an enslaved state that they have created for themselves, primarily through their own internal enslavement that they've created, through the anxiety, the worry, the depression, the shame, the guilt, all the stuff that's all fiction, and all concerning yourself with what isn't. So you want to be happy and contented and peaceful, and live in a way that's a loving way in the world, that you're not dismembered. Stay here. There's no need to go anywhere. So then we teach how to catch yourself from drifting off to these other places, so that you're able to stop yourself and come back. You need to come back. You need to remember. If you don't remember, there's no spiritual life. That's what Isis is saying. Not only is there no spirit, if you remember, when you remember, here's what I'm guaranteeing you: eternal life. I'm guaranteeing you resurrection, the overcoming of death. That's the major issue that everybody is facing in the world: how to treat and deal with death, and and I want to give you I'm going to give you an imagery exercise that has to do with that I think will be very nice for everybody. So, because it's a crucial matter that you're retreating from life by all of this isn't and what doesn't exist and all this illusory life. Doesn't mean we don't slip back when we take this direction. We will slip back, but now you'll catch yourself more readily and more quickly. And there's always ways to check yourself, and the way we teach is how you check yourself and how you know that you're losing your grip on the moment, how you've gone away, and so on, and how to stop it. You want to stop it, and we have many ways to stop it. I've written tons of stuff on the natural laws of self-healing that's either about ways of stopping it, the 1 minute life repair, the Phoenix process, how to stop it. We want to stop it, right? We want to stop running away from life, believing that we're running into life when we're running away from life. It's not a life-oriented life we're leading. We're leading a death-oriented life, because what awaits us is a finitude that we believe has to be the case. So we want to experiment to find out what happens when you remember, because what we're facing in ourselves is the dismemberment. We're dismembering ourselves. Feel anxious, you're dismembered. You feel worried, you're dismembered. You're at sixes and sevens, you tore yourself apart, and your physical body is responding to that. Let me tell you, your immune system is going down, your organ system is getting weak, and all of the physiological functions, your vascular system, your heart, everything is getting weaker. It's all dying because you refuse to remember. Why not? And I tell you because I do know for a fact, because it's been from the tradition, from the point of view that I come, which happened to be a medical point of view. I was trained in medicine, and so on, and in the mind, and I know, and I've done research to show this, that when you remember, things happen to your system that's salutary. Your blood pressure normalizes, your pulse normalizes, your oxygen capacity normalizes. People get over asthma. People's heart rates get stronger. They get stronger hearts. I've done 2 research studies along these lines to show that your life takes a turn for health. And the word health is connected in the English language to the word heal and whole and holy. The root of the words health, heal, whole, and holy comes from the same root in the English language, Kailo, Greek root. So you want to take on a life of remembering, and a life of remembering is to take on a life of giving honor to the invisible reality.